you haven't signed up, please sign up. Welcome to the Committee on Finance public hearing. Today is June 13th, 2023. I'm Councilman James Taylor, and I would like to acknowledge my fellow council members. We have Sue Anderbaugh to my right, Councilwoman. In front of me is Councilman Miguel Sanchez. To my right is Councilwoman Mary Kay Harris. To my right is Councilman Pedro Espinal. To my left is the President, Rachel Miller, and the internal auditor. And also, I'm sorry, to my left is Councilman John Goncalves. We will begin taking public comment, and it's going to be, we're going to do proponent and opponent back and forth. You'll have 2 minutes to speak. And if you're just coming in, if you please sign in if you want to talk for or against. And when they're done, the city sergeant, if you could please bring up the list to me, please. Thank you. I'd also like to acknowledge Councilwoman Althea Graves, who just walked in, and Councilwoman Shelley Peterson. And I also forgot to acknowledge my Yankee left-hand man here, the Deputy City Solicitor, Ken Cheverini. Has everybody signed in? City Clerk, if you could bring up the papers so I know the names to call. The City Sergeant, I'm sorry. Did I say clerk? Okay, so if I mess up any names, please bear with me. But we're going to start with the opponents. When you come to the microphone, please state your name and your address. And like I said, you'll have 2 minutes to speak. First one is Joe Cornwall.
I thank you again. My name is Joe Cornwall, and I'm in the 12th Ward. I live at 88 Holden Street. I'm a landlord. In 21, my tenants were paying about $165 a month in city taxes. Tax rate didn't go up, but the assessment did, and now they're paying about $210 a month. Now another $5 or $6 is going up. A house in the neighborhood is for sale. It was assessed at around $230, $240. It's on the market for $455. They won't get the $455, but they'll get a good price because there's nothing on the market. A house just sold, a small, really a little bit more than 1.5 stories on Smith Hill for $545. And the new owners, professional people, good people, they couldn't find anything on the west side. So this is kind of what we've got going on. What I wanted to just say about this today is I was visiting my sister, and she lives in Massachusetts, out in the Ticky Weeds, maybe 800 people in that town, and they have 3 elected council people who do both the executive and the legislative work in the town. So of those 800 people, they have 3 representatives they vote for. Each representative represents about 267 people. Now here in Providence, Miss Althea is representing over 12,000, and she comes down here, and then she has to deal with another 14 others to make this all work. That's the way it is. But there's this ocean of ignorance between what our council people are trying to do and what we who are citizens know, and it's impossible for us to help them, to assist them. My tenants don't know what their tax rate is. It's all buried. It's always buried in mortgage rates. It's buried in taxes, in other fees. I just wanted to address that and say more information has to be gotten down to the citizens so that we can help our council people make decisions. This tax increase, it's going to happen, but I think going forward, I'd love to see more happening so we can all work with this together instead of it being like this every 2 or 4 years. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, Nick Freeman.
Good evening. My name is Nick Freeman. I live at 176 Whitford Avenue in Providence, Rhode Island. That's in the 5th Ward. I'm a lifelong Providence resident. I'm also here representing the Providence Foundation where I work. I'm assistant director there. We are a nonprofit organization that represents 130 downtown Providence organizations ranging from businesses to nonprofits, arts and cultural organizations, colleges, hospitals, you get it. I'm here to testify in support of the budget as amended. I want to thank everyone here for all the hard work that went into it. I also used to work in the city council office for about a decade, so I know the incredible time and effort that goes into these things. I want to thank the council staff, the clerk staff, the mayor staff for all the hard work that went into this. I'm mainly here to say thank you for including 2 major things that the Providence Foundation cares deeply about that were included in this budget, and I want to just thank everyone for the hard work in making these things possible. The first is including the funding of 2 police academies. Thank you. This has been an issue that's been brought up in my board meetings and with people around downtown Providence over and over again. The Providence Police Force is down on its total number of officers by about 25% from 10 years ago, and many of its current officers are at or above retirement age as it is. There's an argument to be made that not funding police academies might actually cost the city more in terms of long-term overtime and all the other things that are going to go along with that. So I really appreciate that the 2 academies were included in this budget, and I'd also strongly encourage everyone here to use these academies and use all of our social networks and everything for these academies to turn them into a great opportunity to make sure that the Providence Police Force reflects the diversity of our great city. When I worked for the council 10 years ago, we did a special commission to study diversity and equity in city employment, and specifically looking at public safety was an area where we all acknowledged the city could do better. Now's the opportunity to do that. I think it's a great chance. I thank everyone here for funding those 2 police academies, making that possible. The second thing I want to thank you all for including this is a reduction in the commercial property tax rate. According to the Lincoln Land Institute, among major U.S. cities, Providence has the third highest commercial tax rate in the country. It's about twice the national average for commercial tax rates. That makes it really hard for Providence to compete with our regional peers, with other cities in the area. It makes it hard for local Providence residents to start and grow their own businesses. The 30-cent decrease in the commercial tax rate is greatly appreciated. It's going to help Providence residents start and grow their own businesses. It's going to help our city compete economically with others around the area. I thank you for including all of these, and I'd be remiss if I didn't end my comments here by just saying all of us are thinking about Chairwoman Anthony and everything that's been going on there. Our hearts and our thoughts and prayers are with her. So thank you. Strongly encourage you to support this budget.
Thank you for your comment. Next is Alexandria Gonzalez.
Good evening, council members. Alexandria Gonzalez. I'm a resident at 178 Sterling Avenue. Some of my concerns with the budget are the tax increases on Pacific wards. I'm going to use Ward 11 as an example. We have an influx of nonprofit agencies which take up a large amount of that area. With those businesses not being taxed, it then in turn puts strain on the residents that are renters, when we know most of that property is of renters and not owners. I also want to speak of the commercial tax rate. So it's great to drop it by 30 cents, but the odds of people actually getting their business started and even applying for that tax rate are two different things. So it's great, but we need to look at what is that actually doing for the people trying to start business. And with the nonprofits coming in on such a high level, businesses are going to turn. They're not going to go down Broad Street. They're going to go the other way. And we're going to have now 4 red lights completely stopped by this new development. So people aren't just going to be badgered at the first or 2 red lights. It will continue on. So I think we need to look at there's a massive strain that is being put on our community by the nonprofits that aren't paying their fair share. And then also in regards to our deputy police chief, he'll be making more than the governor. So I just think we really need to look at that. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your comments. Next will be Robert Burke.
Good evening, Robert Burke. My business is at 44 Custom House Street here in the downtown. My wife and I own the Potiphar restaurant and the commercial condo that it has occupied now for 51 years in the downtown. The commercial taxpayer pays a very different rate than the residential taxpayer and gets very different outcomes. Compared to the residential taxpayer, the commercial taxpayer gets virtually nothing back in services from the city. I know that sounds shocking, but I would like to convince you of that. First of all, commercial property owners are forbidden from sending children to a Providence school. It's against the law. They will be arrested if they try to do it. The same is true with trash removal. Commercial property owner is obligated to hire a trash hauler that will easily cost between $5,000 and $10,000 per year over and above their tax bill. And we pay a dumpster fee to the city on top of that. By ordinance, a commercial property owner must install expensive fire protections, reducing costs to the fire department and dramatically increasing the cost of construction and starting or operating a business. In the downtown district, all around us right now in these buildings, is an entire private police force on duty 24 hours a day, security guards. That is all paid for by commercial property tax over and above the tax bill to the city. Commercial taxpayers pay for schools that they cannot legally use, trash service that doesn't pick up their trash, and significantly reduces the burden for the police and fire protection in the city. So what's left in the city budget after schools, trash, police, and fire? There's street cleaning and snow plowing. By law, commercial property owners must remove snow and ice within 24 hours of a storm or face fines. That leaves street cleaning, which it turns out is also a cost over and above taxes. Downtown had to form the Downtown Improvement District in order to provide basic services. That adds another 91 cents over and above the commercial tax rate for every commercial property owner located within that district.
Mr. Burke, if you could wrap it up a little.
I will. It's much worse if a commercial taxpayer is a restaurant. We pay a $2,000 license fee, and the community of restaurants pays a 1% meals tax to the city, which amounts to a $7.5 million payment to the city every year, in addition to our tax burden. Many years ago, the mayor of New York, Bill de Blasio, had dinner at my restaurant, and he asked me, "How are things going in Providence?" And my answer was that I could move my restaurant to Midtown Manhattan and pay a significantly lower commercial tax rate. He looked at me and said, "That doesn't seem possible." I said, "But it's true, because we are consistently at the top or among the highest few commercial tax rates in the nation." For our city to attract more businesses, and that's what we need to do, we need to make it more feasible for them to start and continue to operate the businesses that we have, and reduction in the commercial tax rate will do that. I ask today that you consider an extra reduction for the restaurant community. We hire many of the most marginalized people in the city, people that our schools failed. And since we contribute $7.5 million more than any other tax-paying business through the meals tax, which doesn't go to the state, it goes directly to the city of Providence, we ask that you consider giving a special exception for the restaurants that now are facing all of these additional fees and taxes, especially as we try to come out of COVID. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Shauna Kurland.
Evening, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee and council people and regular people. First, I just want to say I appreciate the work that the council's done on this budget. It is better. It is better than what you were handed, which was atrocious. So that, I want to say that out loud. I know you all must have worked really hard and pushed, and trying to do that together is not easy. So good job. That's something. Where I want to criticize and where it falls short, I also want to own that too, because as much as I wanted more from you all, me and all the people out there that don't like this needed to put a whole lot more in ourselves. That's great, wonderful, come out to a budget hearing. I'm here, I signed up and I'm speaking, but I didn't bring 5 people with me, let alone 50. So what does that do? We haven't done the kinds of actions and shutting down City Hall like we used to, so I'll own that too. This budget needs to be a whole lot different than it is, but that's on us as much as it's on all of you, for sure. So an example of that is listening to Mr. Burke talk about the commercial landowners being like, Jesus come to save us, hallelujah. We allow you to exist in our city. It is our city. So please don't get that backwards as you were doing. We let you be here. You are not helping us We are helping you by allowing you to be in our city where we live, our homes, where we raise our children and send them to schools. And I don't actually hear a whole lot of people with more money who don't live in the city but own very profitable businesses. I don't hear them clamoring to send their children to Lima or to Sackett Street or to any of our schools or to Roger Williams Middle School. So I don't think that's quite a point. They come, they're customers, we provide the services. They do get fire and police. In fact, a lot of the police, if we remember all the police scouring all over downtown, violating the civil rights of anybody who even appeared to them to be unhoused, that was at the insistence of the downtown business owners. So I do think they get a whole lot of the services they request. So in terms of just getting concrete about it, then they should be paying more, of course, because we are allowing them to come into our homes and exist. And they need to be good neighbors, and they sure aren't giving our folks the high-paying jobs. So let's remember that part of it too. Those high-paying jobs, they bring their own people, and then what happens? Those people move in, and where do the rents go? Boom, and thus we're faced with this situation. So a couple just ideas for as we're going to keep pushing for the future then, and I'll drop those and leave them because I know this is 1 year, but there are many, many more years left to fight. For instance, the police budget, and you can call it defund, you can call it transform, you can call it, hey, I got an idea. We talk about the mall and the need for security, and the police are stressed out about it, and the children are either angry or afraid, and the same with parents. So what if, instead of for a fraction of the cost of the police academy, you hire 100 grandmothers, you give them training in some, personal safety, the way CNAs get trained to do restraints, and you get 100 grandmothers patrolling the mall. You don't need police if we can think about the skills that exist in our communities already, right? So another, just a piece then, this isn't so much a project idea, but a warning. We talk about the unfunded pension liability. There's another big, fat, hidden potential source of money, drain of money out there, and that is your civil lawsuits against the city, and particularly for civil rights violations. And I know Mr. Cheverini, Attorney Cheverini, is familiar with those, and as Deputy Solicitor, I know he has a very broad and deep knowledge, so I'd like to ask him to bring this back to the organization. But for instance, when you were given a report required by city ordinance on the existing civil litigation the city's involved in, they left out every civil rights lawsuit, every Fourth Amendment violation, pending lawsuits in federal court and some in state. They left out, I didn't see any employment discrimination cases on there, and just the ones I know about. There's so that's something that it's this whole hidden, and maybe the city wins all of them. Goodness knows they are tight at the negotiating table, so, there's that. But at some point, some of that is going to hit home, and you are going to be surprised because you're not aware of what all's out there. So that's something to think about, in particular with policing, because until there's ways of enforcing that police have to respect people's constitutional and civil rights, there's also financial liability to it as well as the moral problem. Thank you very much.
Thank you for the comments. Next will be Angel Lopez.
Hi, thank you for the opportunity to speak to you all today. My name is Angel Lopez. I'm a resident of Providence for almost over 30 years. So this budget, to me, what it's aiming to do is deal with 11 million of budget revenue decreases and fulfilling that on the backs of real estate taxes, over 10 million to be exact. And I don't see any significant increase in any of the pilot payments. I don't see any significant increase, and the pilot payments, that's in terms of dollar amount, not in terms of percentage. I don't see any significant increase in the licensing and permits revenue except for 1.3 million decrease in zoning, in structure and zoning. And it seems like that's what the city is depending their plans on. And licensing and permits, that's revenue generated by the people, right? This is permits, this is building permits, business permits, small business permits, new businesses. And the dip in this revenue in this category just has me questioning like economic development. So I went through the details of the budget, and I'm gonna keep this like obviously within my time. And looking at the budget, I can pinpoint about $3 million that we can cut to reduce that $10.7 million burden on residents, which is close to 29% of a decrease. And it's just also areas where you all can look at on this finance committee. So going through the different departments, I'm just gonna highlight these 3 areas. There's fees that are not classified, and that's an area to look into. Validate those fees that are not to be classified, spread across different departments. Also, there's private contracts in significant amounts in certain departments. For instance, the tax assessor's department, why would we need, I'm not even gonna mention, why would we need that much of private contracts in the tax assessor's department if those are jobs that, you know, either people that live here do or employees of the city, right? And there's also miscellaneous expenses. So I hope you all look into these areas. There's departments that I pointed out from the city solicitor's office, police, information and technology. And when I compare that to looking at the License Bureau department and their revenue projections, I mean, there's increases in art, there's increases in liquor stores, there's increases in Sunday and holiday sales permits, there's increases on extension of the premises, car repair dealerships, new ones, and valet parking. So these are all jobs that we the residents, we the people here do or create for the most part. So if any of you want to talk about this before the June 30th deadline and get the details, feel free. I'll make myself available. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Sean Selleck.
Good afternoon. I'm Sean Selleck. I live at 138 Mr. Street. I was saddened to hear the news about Chairwoman Anthony today. It's great to be back in City Hall, and it's great to be speaking at what we believe to be the first ever public hearing on an amended Providence budget, seemingly providing more transparency and a more thoughtful legislative branch that genuinely wants to listen to their constituents. So thank you, sincerely. It's very encouraging, and I want to help. Even if this new class of elected officials wants to do the right thing, it is not enough to make good decisions going forward. We must understand where we came from and remove harmful situations created in the past. That list is long, and way longer than I'm going to talk about tonight. But if those who have personally witnessed abuses came forward and identified them publicly, there would be better awareness and understanding of where we still have work to do. The whole purpose of this public hearing is to talk about how we will spend our taxes on goods, services, and staff. Particular staff have a closer relationship to this budget than others because a significant portion of their responsibilities are focused on overseeing or documenting the expenditures in this budget. That makes their independence, transparency, and ethics all the more integral to serving our city well. In the past, the importance of this standard has not been observed as it should, sometimes deliberately and sometimes out of ignorance. The City Council is the most powerful body in this City Hall, but in order to preserve democracy, the City Charter requires a separation of powers. The Council cannot set their own salaries or the salaries of the mayor, council appointees, department heads, and others. That is done by a very special body called the Salary Review Commission. Unfortunately, the prior city council leadership ignored that restriction and nobody questioned it. Probably in order to consolidate his control of power over city council appointees, which are not supposed to be controlled post-appointment, the former council president and finance chair created a new job called city treasurer and deputy and director of legislative policy. It's in this current budget still, even though it has a typo. This was and is a blatant and egregious violation of our city charter. It is against the law. But laws have no value if they're not observed or enforced. In this proposed budget, the city treasurer has a salary range of between $65,000 and $70,000. But that figure cannot be changed in this budget because only the Salary Review Commission can change it. So where in that range does the salary of our current city treasurer fall? $66,000, $67,000, $70,000 at the top? None of those. He makes over $170,000. Why? The city council passes the laws. The city council even recommended changes to the city charter just last year, all of which were approved by voters. If we need to change the salary of the city treasurer, all I'm asking is, in this new chapter of our city, we could do better to avoid situations that smack of bribery or corruption. Every time the city treasurer signs his own check, he is thumbing his nose at the city charter, thumbing his nose at the Salary Review Commission, and thumbing his nose at the people of Providence. The city solicitor hasn't stopped this from happening. He has turned away and ignored what his own deputy said on record during the last Salary Review Commission. It's still on YouTube. This is a run around the city charter. Crickets. These situations are a blemish on our city. It looks like people are being paid off, favors being curried. If we need a higher salary for the city treasurer, then let's ask the proper body to give that title a raise when it meets next time. A similar level of violation exists in the department I'm most intimately familiar with, the city clerk. In this budget are positions that continue to create a constitutional crisis, or in our case, a charter crisis. How many vice presidents of the United States do we have? How many lieutenant governors in Rhode Island do we have? One. They are part of the chain of succession. How many first deputy clerks do we have? Before the last council leadership? One. How many do we have now? Not one, not even two. The former finance chair and council president created a second and third first deputy clerk without even talking to the serving city clerk about it. He gave them a raise to curry favor. The city charter states that in absence of the city clerk, the first deputy clerk will serve. And in the absence of the first deputy clerk, the second deputy clerk will serve. So what happens today if the city clerk is absent and official documents need to be signed with the city seal? Does the first deputy clerk, the second first deputy clerk, or the third first deputy clerk serve? If the first deputy clerk is absent, does the second first deputy clerk, the third first deputy clerk, or the second deputy clerk serve? Does this sound ridiculous enough to everyone?
Mr. Selleck, if you could wrap it up, please.
If the creation of these new roles or something like it was actually the right thing to do, this could have been fixed in the charter last year, but nobody cared. And maybe nobody cares today that hundreds of thousands of dollars of raises are being paid for roles that have redundant responsibilities, and millions will be paid out of our pension because of those raises. It's a good thing we don't have a pension problem. Thank you so much for the opportunity to speak this evening.
Thank you for your comments. I'd also like to recognize that Councilwoman Anna Vargas is here. And the next speaker is, it's on both of them, Jeremy Costa.
Good afternoon or good evening, whichever it is to you. My name is Jeremy Costa, and I deeply oppose the current mayor's budget. And I'm going to give you some reasons why I oppose this budget, and I'm going to do some salary calculating for you first off. Now, I'm not sure if you guys are aware, and I know that you guys are pretty responsible. I know Mrs. Anthony is very responsible, and just wanted to say prayers to her and hope for a speedy recovery. based on this budget that's in front of me, we are spending money on positions that could truly be evaporated by community engagement. For instance, they wanted to start a police academy, another police academy, when we have shown that we can reduce crime because we did a PFM report, which we paid millions of dollars out of our allocated money that was given for our COVID funds. We did a budget request out of the allocation from the COVID relief money to make sure we did the proper research so that this budget wouldn't be so difficult in regards to the police. We were dealing with contract issues, we were dealing with pension issues, but we ended up making sure that they got their 17% pay increase. But most importantly, out of that data that we gathered is that we were able to fight crime with reduced numbers. They had the least amount of police force, and we had the most progress. We have a previous chief of police that is now working in DC because of his unbelievable work with the amount of staff that he was able to manage. So I don't know where these elected officials feel, meaning mayor, feel that it's important that we need to have another police academy. When the police, let me just look at the, as I said, we're going to do a salary calculator on this. The average mayor in the state of Rhode Island makes $72,000. The average mayor. Brett Smiley, Mayor Lorza, last year made about $125,000. There are 15 employees that are working for the police department that make double the income that the average mayor is making in the state. We have also a police chief who is under investigation right now, that we are funneling almost twice as much as the average employee that works for the state makes. We also have, like someone mentioned, unconstitutional ordinances that we're operating under that could possibly be dealing with litigation that we don't know the ramifications of. We have lawsuits from the Jamal Gonzalez case that are still being adjudicated, that we have no clue of what's going to happen to this city, their pension, their bonds. And we want to fund another mechanism to criminalize individuals. Before you guys make a decision on this budget and putting more police on the streets, I want you guys to read this book. It's called Profit and Punishment: How America, and just take the word and put Providence, has criminalized the poor in the name of justice. Because this book is by Tony Messenger. And before any of you guys make a decision on this budget, I want you to read this book from page to page. It's very simple. It's a very simple read. But I want you guys to read this and understand that your community is hurting. We don't have the money to be able to be helping these organizations, and I'm going to say that the police union is an organization that is used to oppress specific groups of people. We don't have that kind of money.
Mr.
So
Costa,
please, I'll be done, Mr. Till. So please, before you guys make an impulsive decision because you think that you're running out of time, make sure you do your due diligence. Make sure you look at the PFM report. Make sure you review the statistics. If there's no data, there's no change. We have the data. We gathered it. We paid $1 million for that report. Utilize it and save these people money. $200, $400, $800 on their tax bill will make a difference in their life. Inflation is not going anywhere. We're going to be hitting a banking crisis like no other in about 2 months. Small community banks are going to disappear from lenders, so no one's going to be able to borrow money in a little while. There's going to be a credit crunch. So we need to make sure we're fiscally responsible. This is not fiscally responsible. And to put the burden on taxpayers is a backdoor tax on the poor, because that's what your constituents are. 37% of the people are in poverty. That's all I wanted to say.
Thank you for your comments. Next is Aranja Kirby. Amanda Kirby? Aranda, sorry.
So my name is Aranda Kirby, and I live at 282 Wayland Avenue in Providence. And I'm coming in tonight to say that I do support, and I really do appreciate the effort that the council has taken to revise the initial budget. It's really tough times, and nobody wants to hear that, and nobody wants to make sacrifices, but we really all have to make sacrifices. So I appreciate you looking at the residential tax rate. I appreciate you circling back on the homestead exemption, and I appreciate you lowering the commercial rate, because we all have to be able to give. I will really, really urge you, though, to pay attention to and be very engaged in the pilot negotiation that's going on. That is a huge piece of budget reform that is desperately needed in this city, right? I don't think the budget does enough to help the pension liability situation that we have. I think we just keep kicking that can down the road. I know we had a fiscal plan for it a couple years ago. I think we can all agree that we acted too late on that plan, and I'm urging this council to really be more attentive than councils have been in the past and be more engaged in the process early on rather than waiting until the end. I know you guys are meeting tonight. I hope there's still more in here that you can tweak and reduce with the eye on the amount of liability this city is living under right now. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Next is Christina Rourke.
Thank you, City Council. I actually am a resident of Massachusetts. I do not live here, but I was a victim of a crime in the city of Providence. I bring forth in support of the amended budget with the known information. I was going to just submit my testimony over email in case of for my safety and my health, but I have to let the information known, and I will provide the email and following information. I noticed 2 OPR reports missing in the quarterly reports to the City Council. I provide 6 following best practices on a professional level and advise for the safety and health of Providence as a whole. Without trust, ethical oversight, and safety, a healthy community cannot exist. I look forward to changing the narrative of keep your mouth shut, which is directly taken from a human trafficking Providence police training directly, and...
Excuse me, can you speak up? Some of the council people can't hear you.
Okay, sorry. It's keep your mouth shut, quote unquote, directly taken from a training that was approved for this current academy. I don't ask, don't tell unofficial policy or culture can only add to the historic plague of corruption. Mission statements sound fulfilling. Here are the actions that will fulfill the words. 1 is sexual social clubs. There are 3 sexual social clubs in the city of Providence that have created another legal loophole, evading any governing or regulations. I have raised the question of safety and health standards to the mayor's office since April 2023. I have not heard back, while the Department of Health views the point of concern following the data that I will provide, particularly when cases of females with chlamydia, the amount is more than New York and Massachusetts, and that's not per capita. That's the actual numerical number, and it is across the board staggering. The second comes to human sex trafficking. The existing sex trafficking training module to the graduating academy currently needs immediate attention, review, and appropriation, along with the support and involvement of a well-known agency with experience combating and working with human trafficking survivors, or the Rhode Island Attorney General's Office or the U.S. Attorney's Office. This is a quality of life generational impact concern, public safety concern. Since 2015 to the year 2019, there was day one reported 200 child victims of sex trafficking, 100 adult victims in Rhode Island. That was pre-pandemic, so that was before many economic and social factors that add to groomers and lots of sex trafficking. So one of the sexual social clubs in question, located in Onlyville, is filed under the Rhode Island Secretary of State's website and uses the Providence Police Department address. Either if misappropriation is at play, I bring the information forward. The health of Providence rebuilding from former corruption can no longer afford to keep your mouth shut or turn the other way on quality of life issues, and due especially with more concerns with lack of housing, DCYF, those are the most vulnerable where predators play on.
Christina, if you could wrap it up.
Sure. The two is a subject of grants. I think that there should be a strong support of the staffing positions of who in the Providence Police handles grants in the office for federal grants. I provide 4 different grants or for human trafficking, law enforcement, mental health and wellness act, the Emmett Till cold case investigations, and the ICJR program, Improving Criminal Justice Responses program. And basically a review just for all internal training, because I've gone over the training basically by CALEA, which is the national gold standard. They don't require general orders for domestic or sexual violence. So the city does not have sexual or domestic violence general orders. They have training, which that training I have reviewed the modules. They're very disturbing. The year 2014, they have decreased by 100. They are not appropriate, and I've received other states, and they are very, very alarming. And I am not quite sure, I'm still waiting to hear, because the VAWA's Best Practice Violence Against Women Act is to have an advocate also doing the presentations, and I'm still kind of waiting to hear for those records. So I think there needs to be, I strongly support, but I will just say for the law enforcement, but I think there needs to be a deep, open review. And also one last point is just for either suggesting a quarterly city council meeting, mayoral meeting with Providence Police on any issues. I think there needs to be more public engagement, and that right there is the public engagement, and with day one as well. Because right now I don't know if it's very questionable. So that's a lot. And also to a review of the prosecution and data and statistic of cases, because the Caught on Providence show may have been a hit, but unfortunately there's some ethical questions over maybe a lack of maybe technical prosecution cases you would take, or which ones can be filmed. So would you rather film a misdemeanor, or something that's maybe a misdemeanor, or one that's just kind of notable? So it's just the whole everything needs to also just be have public engagement and have city council be involved. And to be honest with you, I was so proud of the mayor to have that open engagement with the Providence Police, but he knew, I don't understand why the public or if city council was aware of Chief Perez's the investigation. And I think that also it just personally puts a bad taste on it, because I don't think that, not to undermine Chief Perez's character, because there was an investigation going on, but I don't, it was supposed to be all about transparency and public involvement and public trust, and then to find out that, like, well, he knew about that before, it would just, at the end of the day, as much as you're as sick as your secrets. So, and as I have said to PARA, the Parents Authority Board, because I've gone through multiple hearings, is that if I have to face my secrets, Providence needs to face their secrets, because you're as sick as your secrets, and it's only going to get sicker and sicker until everybody finds the strength to face it. So thank you for your time, and I will supply the further documents to that.
Thank you for your comments. Next is Grant Dolgarian.
I apologize, my right leg is not a happy leg at the moment. I'm between cars and the vehicle I was borrowing the brakes gave way. So I'm pumping downhill, pumping, finally steered into a traffic eye on a planter, stopped the vehicle, strained or pulled or sprained something in my leg. It gets stiff like that, so I should have gotten up a couple of minutes ago. I apologize. First of all, thank you very much for all the work you guys do. I appreciate anyone who runs for office because they're dedicated to being a public servant. Excuse me. And thank you for holding a second public hearing on the budget. Providence is one of the few communities in the state of Rhode Island that doesn't allow people to address the council at the end of their monthly or bi-monthly or semi-monthly council meetings. You might want to think about that in the future, because obviously to comment on a budget in 2 minutes, or you're being gracious enough to give people 3-4 minutes is am I not? I'm sorry. Okay. Obviously we can't do justice trying to give substantive comments in that shorter period of time. I'd just like to say that in terms of Rachel Miller's recommended revisions to the mayor's budget, my firm belief is that, and I think I've checked a few communities, my firm belief from what I checked was that our homestead exemption is a lot more generous than just about any community I saw. You guys can check for yourselves and see, but as far as I'm concerned, it would seem that we should not increase the residential rate, but we should decrease the homestead exemption. As I'm not suggesting transformation numbers this time around, but between now and next year, we should. But for this time around, as my mom would say, everything in moderation. And so my suggestion would be that the residential rate should be reduced to $17.50 per thousand, and that the homestead should be decreased to something in the vicinity of 35%. The commercial, I'm a round numbers kind of guy, so why can't we just say commercial is $35 per thousand and leave it at that for the time being? Now, 3 categories that I want to talk about. I talked about 2 categories last month, and I want to talk about 3 this month. The one I didn't talk about last month was housing. We're all talking about housing and how difficult the situation is right now with housing. A few years ago, or maybe a couple of decades ago, we had too much housing, and we were knocking down houses all over the place, and nobody was complaining, except yours truly, who didn't understand it as a kid. I said, this doesn't make any sense, but we were doing it anyway. Now we say, gee, we don't have enough housing. I think it was the mayor that said a couple, 3 months ago that we should look at all the double and triple deckers that we have in the city of Providence and make sure we don't lose any more. And I say that because we're still losing them, and there's no justification for that. So that's number one. To me, double and triple deckers are the epitome of affordable housing. Someone buys it, fixes it up, rents it out, pays for the mortgage, everybody wins. Where we don't comprehend that anymore, it seems, and I'm very concerned about that. So that would be number one. Number two, excuse me, when we talk about, someone was talking about pilot programs and what we should do as far as our tax exempts are concerned. To me, the first step, and we like our tax exempts, they generate jobs, they provide reasons for a lot of people to come visit Rhode Island, but one thing that we have in our comprehensive plan, we've had it for a long time, is we don't like surface parking. If someone wants to do parking, we like structured parking. They don't have big garages; they can be just decks. We have a lot of hills in Providence, so a deck is much less expensive, and we can take advantage of the topography. So that would be the first step, is let's tax surface parking and encourage the private nonprofits, tax exempts, to charge for parking and rebate it in the form of transit incentives. Because there's no such thing as free parking. You got to acquire the land, you got to prepare it, you got to stripe it, you got to pave it, you got to light it, you got to patrol it. There's no such thing as free sweep it in the summer, plow it in the winter. No such thing as free parking. And so, let's charge for parking. Let them charge for parking and rebate in the form of transit incentives. And 97% of the city of Providence is served by RIPTA. So let's encourage folks to get out of their cars and take the bus. Now, I'm not suggesting that if they work 5 days a week, they're going to take the bus every day, because if they have errands to do after work, they want to use the car because it's more time efficient. But 1 or 2 days a week, they're not doing errands every day after work, so 1 or 2 days a week, they could take the bus. Excuse me.
Grant,
now,
if we
finally,
could wrap it up.
I understand. Finally, let me get back to one of the things that I talked about last time. I'm sorry, I talked about 2 other things last time. 30 seconds on one thing. One is recycling. If you get in contact with Solid Waste Management Corporation, Resource Recovery, the landfill, every year they pump out an 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper that delineates the 39 cities and towns and what the recycling rates are. And our recycling rates are not what they ought to be in any city or town. And in Providence, they're pathetic. And there are things we could do to improve that. And I'd be happy to have a conversation with you guys about what simple, low-cost things we can do to get our recycling rates at some reasonable level. Finally, I want to talk about Narragansett Bay Commission, because it's not in the budget. Why? Because they took over our sewage treatment plant in the 1980s, and we passed the Clean Water Act in the 1970s. We want fishable and swimmable. We all want that. But we need to do it as cost efficiently as possible, and we're not doing it as cost efficiently as possible. And Narragansett Bay Commission doesn't care, because they just bill us for whatever they spend the money on. And all I'm suggesting is you don't have to take a position on whether what they're doing makes sense or doesn't make sense. All I'm suggesting is before they spend any more money, do an environmental impact statement that looks at alternatives, compares alternatives, combinations of alternatives. I'm a firm believer the more information we have, better decisions we make. Talk about cost effectiveness. The scientists at the Center for Environmental Studies at Brown University thought that the first tunnel that Narragansett Bay Commission built was a waste of money. NBC did it anyway. The scientists at URI's Bay campus think the second tunnel that Narragansett Bay Commission is in the process of building is a waste of money. Narragansett Bay Commission is doing it anyway. So much for follow the science. 30 more seconds. Hundreds of urban areas in the United States had combined systems like we do, because that was state of the art a century ago. If they were all building tunnels, the machinery would be here in the United States. It's not here in the United States. Narragansett Bay Commission has to import it from overseas, dismantle it, send it down shafts, reassemble it, and start boring through the bedrock. Before they spend any more money, they need to stop, and an independent environmental impact statement needs to occur so we can talk about best practices. We're not looking at best practices. We can compare alternatives, combinations of alternatives. Then we can make a much more informed decision. It has to happen now. If we wait till next year, it's too late. Narragansett Bay Commission will have spent the money, and we will all be paying big bucks. Just as an example, Narragansett Bay Commission earlier this year applied to the PUC, Public Utilities Commission, for not one rate increase, not two rate increases, half a dozen rate increases. I'm sorry, 5 rate increases, a handful of rate increases over the next 5 years, one every year, just to start paying for tunnel number 2. So thank you very much for your time. I'm happy to answer any questions. I'm happy to work with you guys as you work through this year's budget and future
Thank you for your comments. Great, thank you.
Dollars and cents. Thank you.
Next speaker is Ethan Giles.
Ethan Giles, I live in Ward 2. I wanted to echo the sentiments for Chair Anthony, hoping for a speedy recovery. I also wanted to applaud the committee for the increased transparency this year on the budget process. The additional hearing, I lived here 15 years, and this is the first time I felt like engaged to look at the budget process. I felt like it was all very fast and automated before, so I wanted to acknowledge that. My understanding is this budget includes a significant increase to the police budget. I was surprised to see an email from the mayor a couple of weeks ago that laid out a host of new initiatives and programs in the budget that all had a nice dollar cost next to them in the email. Then there was a whole paragraph about police funding, police programs that had no dollar values next to them. So that was an immediate red flag for me. I think that this committee since then has really scrutinized and done a lot of due diligence on the budget, so I'm glad to see that. But I just wanted to register that I'm leery of any increase because I think there's some significant improvement needed related to the public trust, specifically on 3 items. So the first item is law enforcement officers' Bill of Rights. So we haven't seen any movement out of the State House on reforming that. So I think officers who breach the public trust are too well protected. I know that's not directly in this council's control, but I think it's important to say out loud. The second is we have a brand new chief, and I don't think there's been a chance yet to prove a track record there. I think it takes time to build trust with the community with a new department leader. So we had it in the former chief. He had a long track record of trust. I'd like to see that with this new chief before there's a massive increase to a budget handed. We don't know about the chief's acumen as far as managing those dollars effectively. And lastly, and this is one that's directly in council control, is the flock camera program. So that program, I think, it's with a private company. I think there's serious civil liberty concerns there. I don't think the public has really had a chance to weigh in on that program at all. To my knowledge, maybe there were hearings, but I wasn't aware of any about that program. So I would encourage the council to consider enacting a sunset on that specific program unless there are hearings and you all take an explicit vote on continuing that flock camera program. So those are just some examples of they're all around the public trust of those additional dollars for the department. So I hope there's still an opportunity for further amendment to this budget, and I'd consider you all to level fund the department if there aren't movement on public trust items. If not, I'm not in favor of passage. So, thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Next is Liza Birkin.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much. I want to echo everything that Ethan just said. I agree with all of that. My name is Liza Birkin. I am the lead organizer of the Providence Streets Coalition, which is an alliance of about 42 organizations that support safer streets, more transportation choices, and mobility justice here in Providence. I'm going to talk about a section of the budget that nobody's really brought up yet, which is the speed camera revenue allocation. I have emailed my comments to the Finance Committee. I apologize, I don't think I sent it to the clerk, my bad, but I'm happy to share with you tonight. So my work as PSC's lead organizer has led me to have hundreds, if not thousands, of conversations with residents all over the city about mobility, and speed cameras comes up. A lot of what I hear, often in our lowest income neighborhoods, is that people feel like the cameras are a trap, and that's because they are. They are. I'm also a transportation planner, and so I wanted to bring up something. So in transportation planning, you have the posted speed limit, which here in Providence, the standard is 25 miles per hour, and then you have the design speed. And that's the design of the road and how comfortable it feels to drive on it. So the most egregious camera, I think, is on Cranston Street, right by Urban Green's Co-op Market. Because Cranston Street is like 80 feet wide, and there's only 2 lanes. And it feels comfortable to drive like 60 miles per hour there. And I myself have gotten a ticket at that camera. So I think that there are ways, so the way that this program is currently set up is to use the cameras as like a permanent revenue generator and not as a real safety program. And my organization is all about safety, and we want to see this money used for traffic calming, for what we call in the field self-enforcing streets. Streets where the design speed and the posted speed are the same, so that you don't speed, so that you don't have police interactions, so that you don't have tickets. So right now, and I think we can get there with just a few really small tweaks to how this is currently written. It's actually most of the way there. But right now, only 35% of the camera revenue is going to this special traffic calming fund. Only 35%. So that's just a really tiny portion of the money. And I don't know where else it's going. I assume to the police. I don't know. But my suggestion is that at least 75% of the camera revenue be put into the special fund for traffic calming operations. A couple other really small tweaks in it. It says to install speed bumps and raised crosswalks. There are lots of other federally proven traffic calming methods, so we just shouldn't be too prescriptive about what we're saying there. Also in the language, it says to employ the use of speed sleds and other devices that slow traffic. And those are those big digital signboards that say, slow down, speed limit 25. They do not work. Like that's not what I'm talking about. That's not a federally proven safety countermeasure. We are talking about hard infrastructure. And then finally, it says the purchase of marked patrol vehicles. That's the last thing, in my opinion, that this money should be going towards, which is more police cars. It should go, again, to the hard infrastructure that will bring the design speed of the road in harmony with the posted speed limit. It says that the department shall provide a quarterly report to City Council on activities conducted. I think that that should be expanded to say that the DPW should report on results and impacts, as well as spending by council ward. The language currently says that the program shall rotate throughout the city in order to ensure the funds are spent equitably in each area of the city. But we all know that some streets need a lot more attention than others, and there's just cause for them to be spent in more than one neighborhood in one year than another. If that small amount of money is trickled throughout all 15 wards, it's not going to do anything. So I think there is just reason to spend it disproportionately in one neighborhood than another, and we should think about that, and it should be transparent and accountable. My ultimate vision for all of you as counselors is that we collect these funds from the tickets, that money goes into the traffic calming, and then we remove the cameras. Like we should be celebrating press conferences where, oh, look, we widened the sidewalks by this school, or oh, look, we have these chicanes, or we put diverters in front of this grocery store, and that makes it a lot safer for folks. And there's no need for this camera anymore. Let's take it out. I think that, yeah, the camera program should be a genuine safety program, not just like a permanent revenue generator. Thanks.
Thank you for your comments. I have the last one, but if anybody wants to speak and hasn't signed up, please sign up if you have, if not. The last one I have on my list here is Vivian Sutherland. But if you want to speak and you haven't spoken, please sign up. And
hello, I'm Vivian Sutherland. I'm a renter and I work in a restaurant in Federal Hill. I live in Federal Hill. I'm here to advocate on the behalf of people like me. You know, we are people that live in the majority residential housing in Providence. Often, like is my case, in an owner-occupied building. And as we all know, everything's getting tough, right? You know, everyone has to, you know, tighten their pants. And that's all because corporations are driving profits, because they're price gouging people, because they heard, oh, inflation, or they had a nice excuse with the, you know, the war in Ukraine and the pandemic the last few years. You ask any sensible economist and they will show you that profits are what drive inflation. And so we have a system where the rich get richer and the poor get poorer. And I want to ask the City Council, because you know you are our polity, you have the power to, you know, tax these rich corporations. I think you should go after the pilot institutions. I mean, I personally think they should be taxed, massively taxed. And if you can't do that, ask for more from them. It's ridiculous that Brown owns like most of this city, and a lot of our other institutions own most of this city, and they are not taxed. You should increase the tax rate on the commercial properties. It's ridiculous, and I appreciate that, you know, the city council president has tried to, you know, lessen the attacks that landlord-in-chief Mayor Smiley has been trying to make against the working class of Providence, because he thinks that's the best way to go into a recession, to make the working class have to pay for it. But we really need to, you know, expand our ability to actually make the people who have wealth contribute some of that wealth to bettering our society, instead of making the poorest people have to continue to be exploited in multiple facets. And I don't want to take up too much more of your time. I have to say, I really agree with everything that Shauna Curlin said. And I would just implore you to, if you're going to raise the residential tax rates, raise it on Ward 1, Ward 2, Ward 3. You know, this is where a lot of the residential homeowners are already rich. You know, the students on College Hill and downtown, you know, are generally more wealthy, can afford condos and fancy loft apartments. But I see people like me. You know, I'm just a poor trans woman who works at a restaurant for, you know, $15 to $20 an hour. If it wasn't for the pandemic, I wouldn't even have any savings, because Bernie's, you know, unemployment programs like helped me actually be able to save money. Before that, I was living paycheck to paycheck. We're dying from these rent increases, and those are just a tenant tax, really. You know, anytime there's more taxes, local landlords just use that as an excuse to say, well, you know, the taxes are going up, my mortgage is going up, and we all know that that's true. But they use it as a way to price gouge us. And so, you know, if you're not going to think about actually taking more wealth from those who are wealthy to help all of society, to make them pay their fair share, then you have to do something like Seize the vacant properties, the abandoned properties, put them into the land bank that Alorza wanted to do. Create more public housing that's deeply affordable and that can actually be managed by the residents instead of making them feel like they live in a prison. I shouldn't have had to go around Manton Heights and talk to women with their children complaining about the rats that live there. If you let tenants be able to actually manage their own lives in their own housing, it might be a lot better housing and a lot less stigma for public housing. And if we raise taxes actually on major corporations, major institutions, commercial property, and rich, residential homeowners, that could be a way to actually fund these programs that people desperately need. That's my only thoughts. Rent control now.
Thank you for your comments. Next is Rose Siegel.
Short. Hello, councilors. Thank you very much for having this hearing. There's a lot to speak to, but my primary concern that I'd like to address is property taxes. I have houses that I rent and manage. I have one house. I'm sorry, I'm nervous. I have one house. It's a 6-family. The property taxes in 2019 were $9,017 a year. 3 years later, in 2022, the taxes went up to $28,090 a year. That is a 311% increase in 3 years. My property taxes in 2022 went up $35,000 a year. My income was $44,000 a year. Now, I know that there are a lot of issues in the budget and a lot of debt in the city, but things are not equitable. The house that I live in, the 2-family house that I live in, the property taxes have not gone up a penny in 3 years, not a penny. But my tenants, the houses they live in, the property taxes have skyrocketed. We all need to be able to budget. We all need to be able to pay our bills. When I get a notice last July that my property taxes were going up on my rental units, a total of $35,000 a year, and I had to start making payments on that in less than a month, how do you budget that? What effect does that have on the housing in Providence? Now, there was that fancy new building overlooking the water, that river walk, I don't know, 8-story, 10-story thing they built all shiny and new, and I'm sure they had tax stabilization agreements on that. And then Brown bought it, took it off the tax rolls completely. They're not paying taxes. They put 2 kids in each dorm room, charge them each $1,100 a month. They're getting $2,200 a month per bedroom. Believe me, I can't charge a quarter of that. That's outrageous. It is time that the for-profit areas of the nonprofits, specifically their dorms, are taxed at a for-profit rate. It is not fair that they are not paying taxes and me and my tenants get those bills. Additionally, we've got, well, this probably doesn't have much to do with the city, it just gets shoved down our throats. McKee gave $30 million to his billionaire friends for the Superman building so they can build $3,000 a month studio apartments and $5,000 a month two-bedroom apartments, while the state of Rhode Island turns down $174 million every year in federal money for low-income housing, which is housing we need. There's another problem in Providence, and that's the unfunded pension liability. Now, Gina Raimondo had all kinds of balls when she took it on the state level and renegotiated the unfunded pension liability so that people who are making $35,000 a year when they retired, who are collecting $250,000 a year a few years later, aren't bleeding the future out of this city. Someone needs to take that on the city level, because right now, between the nonprofits not paying taxes on all of their residential properties and these unfunded pension liabilities, the small mom and pop landlords, the people who live in 3 families and in 6 families, are paying everyone's tax bill. It is completely unfair and unjustified. Furthermore, I really seriously think that the taxes and how they're allocated should be adjusted. You have a 6-family property that is all residential. It is only residential. There's no business being out of there. It's just 6 tiny little units, because you can't fit big units like in a 3-family in a 6-family building. Now, from what I understand, buildings with 10 units or more, because of federal laws and the Americans with Disabilities Act, those need to have much more expensive accommodations. They need all kinds of disability access, elevators, that sort of thing. I understand why those are commercial properties. But I think anything under 10 units should be zoned residential and taxed at a residential rate. Furthermore, I don't think it's fair that people who are owner-occupants in one 3-family and the identical 3-family right next to it is paying almost double the taxes. It's inequitable, it's not fair, and it's literally killing affordable housing. Because the tenants who live in a house that the owner doesn't live in pay literally twice as much towards that property tax bill. I really, really wish you seriously consider what you're doing with the tax rates. Owner-occupants should not get a 45 or a 43% discount and everybody else pay more. And I don't think it's fair that my 6-family went from $9,000 to $28,000 a year in property taxes, because that means my tenants every single month, every single one of them, $400 a month, every month of their rent goes just towards property taxes. This is going to, Providence, if you don't change this, you are going to create your very own foreclosure crisis. There will be the people who can afford $3,000 a month apartments and the lucky few who get on Section 8. Everybody else is going to be foreclosed and homeless. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your comments. Next speaker, Lori White.
Good evening, members of the Finance Committee and others here tonight. My name is Lori White. I'm the president of the Greater Providence Chamber of Commerce, and the Chamber is headquartered right across the street at 30 Exchange Terrace in Providence. The Chamber owns the building, and we are a commercial property taxpayer. I'm here this evening to speak on behalf of the membership of the Greater Providence Chamber of Commerce, which is small businesses throughout the city and throughout the region. And we are here to express our support on Mayor Smiley's proposed and now amended budget, and we thank the mayor and we thank the members of the City Council for being cognizant and being mindful of the impact that both residential property rates and commercial property tax rates have on the community and have on our local economy. The Chamber is very pleased on behalf of its small business members that the Council and the Mayor's office is working really hard with all of us and with our small business community to make the city a vibrant place and bring back businesses that were so impacted by the pandemic. A lot of the hospitality businesses and the small businesses that make Providence a very unique place. This is important because, as we know, a thriving business sector, a thriving commercial downtown helps to alleviate and relieve the pressure on residential property tax payers. And also the business community is the primary engine for creating jobs for individuals who live and also aim to work in the city. So again, we thank you for your efforts, and we also, on behalf of the Chamber, would like to express our thoughts to Finance Committee Chair Helen Anthony, who is in California and continues to recover, and we wish her well, and we thank you this evening for being able to listen to the voices of the small business community in this respect. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Is there anybody else that would like to speak that did not sign up? If you...
Number one, perhaps to avoid all these discussions in the future, why don't we just tax everybody at the same rate? You know, Brown, commercial enterprises, my house on the east side, that might make things a little simpler. People will complain, obviously, but I just think that's a much easier sell. Particularly in a communistic environment, which is where we're headed. I guess the other thing I like to say is, you know, every day I pick up the paper and somebody's either getting shot or stabbed. I want a police academy. I want to protect my wife and my kids, and I want a police academy. So I'm glad that you're maintaining that in the budget, as I understand it. Kudos to you guys. The other thing that I'd like to say, and it'll be the last thing, is many people have suggested that we look at some of the positions in city government. And I honestly feel, having, like I said, I've worked downtown for, God, 30 years, 40 years, right in the Superman building and in the Fleet Center building. And you probably could cut a lot of fat out of that budget. There are probably a lot of, as my friends would say, no-show jobs, or as someone mentioned here earlier, a young man earlier said, a lot of duplicative work that's being done. I think you take a hard look at that. I mean, I know, having been in business, like I said, for so many years, I wasn't afraid to cut any fat out of any budget. And I went through 2 purges at Fleet Bank where we were told, mandate came down, cut your budget by 15%, cut your staff by 20%. And we did it. And we survived. And we grew. And now we're Bank of America. So that's all I have to say. Thanks a lot.
Thank you for your comments. Anybody else? Please sign in if you haven't spoken. If anybody else, please come sign up if you want to speak. If not, then this gentleman will be the last speaker. Your name?
Bradley Vanderstad, 10-year resident of Providence. My feedback on the budget is that it's just not particularly creative. I feel like there are movements across the country of different ways to approach so many different civic programs that are saving cities money everywhere. And Providence doesn't seem to take a stab at this at all. It seems that we're just focusing on commercial tax versus residential tax rates so much. I know that 2/3 of the city council is new, and I know that everyone didn't run on doing the same old things and focusing on commercial, especially lowering commercial tax rates. Jeremy mentioned earlier about running police departments with community safety and investing in preventative crime measures to lower police budgets across the country instead of investing more. And I especially want to focus on Airbnb. The state passed legislation last year, I believe, that was the Airbnb statewide registry. They said they were going to start assessing fines on people who did not register. They have not enforced that, so that's kind of a toothless piece of legislation. But individual municipalities have been picking up steam in regulation and doing fines and raising money off of this thing that's preventing people from getting access to housing, right? So I just checked while I was sitting there, and there's over 300 units in Providence right now on the Airbnb registry that we're not doing anything to interact with or try to recoup housing from infrastructure that already exists instead of giving big bailouts to big corporations, right? So I think that going forward, maybe it's too late for this budget, but in the future, think a little bit less the same as we've always done and try to think more creatively about how we can address some of these budget concerns. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Again, is there anybody else didn't sign up, want to speak? Thank you, everybody who came out and did speak. Just to make a note that all the letters of testimony that were received will be entered into the record at the next meeting. And if there's no further business, we'll conclude this public hearing. There will be a meeting upon the rise in Committee Room B, Room 305, that will begin in a few moments. Thank you.